So if I understand you correctly, plants have poisons in them. And when we eat these poisons, as a result of them not wanting to be eaten, we suffer as well because we have a hard time breaking a lot of these so-called poisons. I'm being inflammatory here, of course, but you call them pesticides. Now, I was only aware of pesticides that were industrial pesticides. What are some of these pesticides that are naturally occurring in plants, and what plants are the greatest offenders?
There's so many. So if you look at plant toxins, so overall there would be this idea of plant toxins. Within plant toxins, you could break it down into plant pesticides, which I'll talk about. Another whole category of plant toxins would be things like lectins, which are carbohydrate binding proteins. Stephen Gundry's talked about these, which can trigger immunologic reactions in humans. A whole nother category of plant toxins would be things like oxalates. But if we just go to the first category and we think about plant pesticides, you're totally right. Most people think about pesticides as like glyphosate or Roundup, the things we spray on plants. But there's a fascinating paper from Bruce Ames from 1990, I believe, and the title is Dietary Pesticides, 99.99% all natural. And the title means that in a given day, most people ingest about 99.99% of the pesticides they ingest are from the plants they're eating. They're made by the plants to discourage animals and insects from eating them. He goes into great detail in that paper about all the different plant pesticides. The example that most people will know and will probably come as a shock to most people is the compound sulforaphane. Sulforaphane belongs to a family of compounds called glucosinolates. Glucosinolates are in the brassica family. So we go back to this ancestral mustard plant, right? Mustard is the precursor for all the brassica vegetables: kale, collard greens, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, right? Those are all brassica vegetables. Those all had the ancestral mustard plant as their grandfather. That entire family of plants has glucosinolates, right? They make this family of compound called glucosinolates, which are isothiocyanates. Now, how does this work? These are plant pesticides. These are produced by the plant to discourage animals from eating them. Most people have heard of sulforaphane when Rhonda Patrick is talking about like broccoli sprouts, and they hear about sulforaphane as being beneficial. But here's the real sulforaphane story. Sulforaphane doesn't exist as sulforaphane in any plant. It's too oxidatively reactive. What I mean by that is that some compounds we ingest from plants are very good at giving and taking electrons from other molecules and creating free radicals. And this is one of the ways that sulforaphane is very reactive and harmful for humans. If the sulforaphane molecule existed in a plant, it would kill the plant because it is so oxidatively reactive. It's such a strong oxidant. So what the plant does is it stores sulforaphane as a precursor molecule, which is called glucoraphanin. And we see this pattern often in plants. They have a precursor pesticide and they have an enzyme, and they're separated by a compartment in the plant membrane. When an animal chews the plant, they combine and they make the toxic chemical. This is exactly what happens with sulforaphane. So glucoraphanin is the precursor, myrosinase is the enzyme. When you chew kale, broccoli, any of these foods in the raw state, you are combining myrosinase and glucoraphanin and you are forming sulforaphane. And so that is the only time that sulforaphane is formed. What happens when we eat sulforaphane? Sulforaphane comes into the human body and our body says, whoa, that's a very oxidatively stressful molecule. That's going to make free radicals. I'm going to detoxify it. But in the process of detoxifying it, it activates the NRF2 pathway, and sulforaphane can kick up glutathione a little bit, which is why people think it's beneficial, because it does have some hormetic effect. Hormesis is this concept that a little bit of a toxin can be beneficial. The problem with sulforaphane, and the reason the plant made sulforaphane, at least in humans and other mammals, is that this family of compounds competes with iodine at the level of the thyroid to inhibit iodine absorption into the thyroid. So this family of compounds, the glucosinolates, isothiocyanates, these are the major reason for endemic goiter in the world. These are goitrogens. There are other compounds that are goitrogenic as well, drugs we use in psychiatry, lithium, amiodarone, but sulforaphane, glucosinolates, isothiocyanates are goitrogenic compounds. They cause goiter. Have you seen these pictures of people with these huge swollen necks? That's goiter. That's what happens when people don't get enough iodine. And so the plants have figured out, hey, I'm going to make this compound called sulforaphane. I mean, obviously we named it, but I'm going to make this compound if you eat me, and it's going to mess up your thyroid if you eat too much of me. So this is a plant pesticide. This is not something that benefits the plant. It's not something that benefits humans. I would argue it's a net negative for humans. The reason it gets confusing is because the supplement companies want to promote sulforaphane as a hormetic, meaning it's going to increase your glutathione. And glutathione is a molecule that we use as an antioxidant, right? But the tricky part is this. We don't need sulforaphane to make enough glutathione. There are plenty of studies that show that living a radical life, heat stress, cold stress, exercise, sun, these can all also be hormetics. They can increase your glutathione and give you adequate antioxidant status. We don't need sulforaphane, but we're sort of being sold this like bill of goods by the supplement company saying, hey, this will improve your glutathione, but they're not going to tell you about the fact that it's actually a toxin that's going to potentially affect your thyroid in a very negative way. So all these people just crushing broccoli sprouts, there are tons of cases now of actual thyroid disease from people. Examples on my Instagram, Sam Dancer is a good example, a really well-known CrossFit athlete, was just crushing the broccoli sprouts and green smoothies and getting tons of this and really messed up his thyroid. So it's totally a different paradigm shift, right? So the sulforaphane, perfect example of a plant pesticide. Plants don't want you to eat them.
That's crazy. That doesn't make any sense, because isn't a vegan diet the healthiest diet on the planet? You see all these people promoting veganism, and you're sitting here telling me that when they chew on their grass, that it releases toxins and destroys their body. This can't be true.